Join me, please, in Psalm 23. Psalm 23. Pastor Murphy, along with those that did not set their alarms clock, I don't believe my sister Toya did either. I don't see her. I don't see her here. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod, your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We would like to focus our sermonic spotlight on verse 4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I'm going to preach a friend in the valley. A friend in the valley. The valleys of life are inescapable experiences. We will all experience extreme valley encounters. Your valley may not be like my valley, or my valley may not be like your valley. But nevertheless, each of us will experience the sometimes dismal, dark, and disturbing encounters that arise as a result of life's valleys. Whether you're dealing with drastic decisions, a drama-filled divorce, or a devastating death, the valleys of life will come. For you, it may be stricken sickness, money matters, or family fights. Whatever the case, we all will experience valley encounters. Yet and still, there are others who are dealing with lazy loved ones, sneaky sisters, or bitter brothers. Who knows? I don't or won't pretend to know what your individual encounter is with the valley, but I'm sure that you do have a valley in your life. The valley is a place that none of us can avoid. You can't pay enough, can't pray enough, or can't plan enough to escape the valleys of life. We all, black or white, rich or poor, educated or uneducated, liked or unliked, saint or sinner, will one day, in one way, walk through the valley. Now, the only thing worse than having to walk through the valley is having to walk through the valley alone. And this is the simple good news that I bring you today, that you don't have to walk through life's valleys alone. It really does make me proud to be able to tell you that Jesus has set up the times of our lives in such a way that he is both willing and ready to walk through every valley with us. No matter how dark and dismal the valley, Jesus is with us. Forget the headaches and heartaches of the valley. Jesus is with us. Never mind the hurts and tears that accompany the valley. Jesus is with us. I come to the garden, I mean the valley alone, while the dew is still on the rose and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. Here is the shout, he walks with me. And although the valley may sometimes get lonely and friendless, he talks with me. And even though I may feel abandoned of both friends and family in the valley, he tells me that I am his own. And there has to be someone other than myself that's excited about the fact that Jesus is in the valley with you. It's really too early in the morning to be faking and flossing with pew parishioners and seek saints who are too cute to communicate your joy. But rather, I'm talking to the ones like myself who didn't wake up this early in the morning to play with God. But when you think about the goodness of Jesus and how he accompanied you in the valley, you don't mind giving him some praise. I mean, when you really think about the goodness of Jesus and all the things he's done for you, it all calls an almost involuntary response of praise. You know there are some valleys of sickness and sadness you never should have gotten up from. Some valleys of mental mishaps you never should have recovered from. Some valleys of financial deficit that you never should have stood up from. But when you think how good God has been and he's brought you, your hands ought to begin to raise. When you think about how God has made you a way for you, your knees ought to begin to bow. When you think about the many dangers, toils, and snares that God has brought you through, you ought to give God some praise and tell God, I thank you for being a friend in the valley. This is the lesson that David is trying to teach us today in this tailored text. As we walk down through the text, we know that this is a very familiar text. But we can't allow the familiarity of the text to take away from the power found therein. As we walk down through this text, the reason this text is so powerful because it is personal to you and I. It doesn't display Jesus as some general shepherd, but rather it helps us understand that he is our shepherd. And really, when the valleys of life get rough, what I really need to know is that the Lord is my shepherd. I mean, it's good to know that he's your shepherd, and he's good to know that he's the shepherd of everybody. But really, when the days get long and the nights get really dark, I really need to know that the Lord is my shepherd. And that's all David is trying to help us understand in this text as he laced this text with so many personal pronouns. Walk down through the text with me. David says, the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. All David is trying to help us understand is that the Lord is my shepherd. And really, when the times of my life get too rough and I can't handle things, I really need to know that the Lord is my shepherd. Maybe you ain't never had a dark night sometimes when everybody who you called on didn't answer the phone, and those who you could depend on had walked away. The people who said they will be with you forever wasn't with you no more, and you needed to know that the Lord was your shepherd. Here it is. David helps us with this particular text. But this fourth verse is what we want to focus on today, because this fourth verse, it troubles me, Pastor Murphy. Because it almost looks as though this fourth verse does not even belong in this particular text. I mean, read the text. When you read verses 1 through 3, it's all of this good stuff that happens. Yeah, he's my shepherd, and I'm in green pastures. He's restoring my soul, and all of this good stuff that goes on in verses 1 through 3. And then when you read verses 5 through 6, there's more good stuff. He anointed my head with oil, and my cup is running over, and goodness and mercy has followed me all the days of my life. All of this good stuff in verses 1 through 3. And then more good stuff in verses 5 and 6. But right there in the middle, here's this mess about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. It's as if they don't even belong in the text. But I think what David is trying to help us understand is right in between of your green pastures and you being beside still waters, in between that and your head being anointed with oil, there will be some valley experiences. You might as well go and settle in your saddle and get used to the idea that you're going to have some valleys sometimes in your life. You won't be able to go through this life without experiencing some valleys sometimes. Valleys will come your way. Valleys is like the old McDonald's song, valley here a valley, there a valley, everywhere a valley. We all will have valley experiences sometimes. But the good news is that there is a blessing on the other side of the valley. Yeah, there's a blessing on the other side of the valley. You have to go through the valley to get from God what he has for you. Let me see if I can make it. I remember when I was a kid, I used to go to, it was called Great Explorations. It was on 4th Street. Yeah, they moved to 22nd Avenue North now. But when I was a kid, it was on 4th Street. And I used to go to Great Explorations, and I liked the place. You're supposed to learn about science and everything like that. Never really learned anything. It was just a field trip. But what I did like about it is at the end of each experience there, we got to go through what they call a touch tunnel. Yeah, a touch tunnel was this dark tunnel that we had to go through, and you couldn't see anything. You just felt your way around. And I didn't really like the tunnel because it was dark and you couldn't see nothing. I didn't really like the tunnel. But what I liked about the tunnel was when you got to the other side, there was a lady standing there with a basket of candy. Yeah, I liked that. And we could get a piece of candy once we went through the tunnel. Now, if I could have just went around the tunnel and got the candy, I would have done that. But they wouldn't let you do that because you know what Great Exploration was trying to teach us? That there's something good on the other side of the tunnel, but you got to go through the tunnel to get it. And that's all David is trying to teach us up in this text today, that there's some blessings on the other side of the valley, but you have to go through the valley to get what you want from God. And there's somebody other than myself up in here who's been through the valleys of life, who's been through some tough times, who's been through some devastation, and you understand that God did have some good stuff on the other side of the valley, but I had to go through the valley to get what God had for me. Okay, 3 things I want to tell you, then I'm going to be done. First of all, when we're in the valley, we have to have the right perspective. Let the church say the right perspective. Yeah, David says here in the text, verse 4, he says, yea, though I walk through the valley. Yeah, yea, though I walk through the valley. And the problem with this particular text is that there is a loss of excitement when we read this text in the English. Yeah, when David wrote this particular text, the spirit in which he wrote it, we don't read it in our English language. There's a loss of excitement. Usually this is how we read the text. He restores my soul. He leads me beside paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Now, that's not the spirit in which David wrote the text. David wrote the text in this spirit. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley. Yeah, this term yea is not David being sad about the valley, but rather it's David celebrating the valley. Yeah, it's not David being upset because he has to go through the valley, but rather David is celebrating over the fact that God allows him to go through the valley. You see, in all those other verses, when he's talking about his head being anointed with oil and beside the still waters, David don't say yea about that. But when David understands the value of the valley and how beneficial the valley is, David shouts over the fact that that God allows me to go through the valley. And I know that's not popular preaching, that we celebrate the fact that the valley is there. But I understand now that I'm older that the valleys really help develop who I am. See, I used to get sad about the valleys, but now I understand that I wouldn't be who I was if it had not been for the valleys that God allowed me to go through. And I'm not the only one up in here. There's somebody else up in here that can testify that if it had not been for the valleys, I would not be who I am and I would not be where I am. But because God allowed me to go through the valleys of the shadow of death, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, and I'm better because of the valley that God allowed me to go through. Maybe you in the valley. Maybe you ain't seen the benefit yet, but I'm here to testify that once you get to the other side of the valley, you're able to say, God, I can stand stronger on the mountain because of the experience that I had when I was down in the valley. God allows us to go through the valley to get out of us what he put in us. The valley develops us and makes us into what we are. So you got to have the right perspective. Instead of being sad about the valley, you have to celebrate over the valley. That's the time when God is making you and molding you into what he'll have you to be. Let me see if I can put it to you this way. Two pails are on their way to the well. One pail says to the other pail, I'm mad right now. Pail says, why are you mad? He says, because no matter how full we leave the well, we always come back empty. He says, that makes me mad. The other pail says, well, I was about to celebrate. He says, why was you about to celebrate? He says, because no matter how empty we come to the well, we always leave full. Two pails in the same situation, but one had the right perspective. So you can come up here on Sunday morning if you want to and talking about no matter how full I leave church on Sunday, I always come back empty. Or you can have the right perspective and say no matter how empty I come up here on Sunday morning, I have an encounter with Jesus, and when I meet Jesus, I leave up this place full. You got to have the right perspective about what you're going through. See, y'all not feeling this thing like I need you to. Let me put it to you this way. Our mothers and fathers, we just left African American History Month. Our mothers and fathers didn't have half of what we have. We're more educated, more sophisticated, more cultured than they ever was. But what they did have was Jesus. And although they were oppressed, although they were segregated, although they were going through a Jim Crow South, they were pushed down by the man all week long. There was one mistake, Dr. Murphy. On Sunday morning, they met Jesus. And when they met Jesus, they was able to sing, I love the Lord because he heard my cry and he pities my every groan. As long as I live and troubles rise, I hasten to his throne. They were able to come in here on Sunday morning and sing, since I laid my burdens down, I feel better. So all I'm trying to tell you, you got to have the right perspective. Not only do you have to have the right perspective, but secondly, you have to realize that the valleys are personal. Let the church say personal. David says, yea, though I walk through the valley. God has set up the times of our lives in such a way that he has made the valley experience personal for you and I. Here it is. Have you ever been in a situation where there's people around you, but nobody really knows what you're going through? That's because God has set it up so the valleys will be personal. Let me see if I can make it more. Have you ever been in worship and you're clapping like everybody else? You stand at the same time as everybody else? You wave your hands when everybody else wave their hands, but you're dealing with something on the inside that nobody knows about, that even if you told them, they really wouldn't understand? That's because God has set up our lives so that we will experience the valleys by ourselves. And the reason God allows us to experience the valleys by ourselves, because God wants us to understand when we come out of the valley that it was nobody else but him that helped us get through what we were going through. Because you know how we are. If we came through the valley and had the help of somebody else, we would give praise to everybody else but God. If God fixed your marriage, too soon, you will say, I'm glad I went to that marriage counselor. If God fixed your finances, you will say, I'm glad I went to that financial planner. If God made your health better, you will say, I'm glad I went to that doctor. But every now and then, God allows it to get bad enough so we can say it was nobody but you, Lord. My friends had left. My doctor gave me a bad diagnosis. Everybody else said I was going to fall. But God, you brought me out. And when God is all you got, you realize that God is all you need. I'm not making this up. It's right here in the 4th verse. It seems as if there's a change of audience. Read the text. David says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It's almost as if David is talking to somebody else about his shepherd. Yeah, the Lord is my shepherd. He's telling somebody about his shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down. He does this for me. He does. It's as if David is talking to somebody else about his shepherd. But then in verse 4, there's a change of audience. David is no longer talking to somebody else about his shepherd, but he's talking to the shepherd himself. He says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, not because he's with me, but because you are with me. Yeah, there's a change of audience. And I think what David is trying to help us understand is those people that were with you when you had green pastures and when you were beside the still waters, they will leave you in verse 4 of your life. But it don't matter if you leave me as long as God is still with me. That's all I really need, because if God be for me, that's more than the whole world against me. And maybe that don't mean nothing to you, but I've been a victim of somebody who said they were going to be with me, but they left me. But I found out when they left me, God was really all I needed. You know what troubles me? I'm trying to hurry on, but you know what bothers me, Pastor Murphy? How can somebody who has just as much problems as I do, just as many sin as I do, how can they leave me when I go through my stuff? But a God who knows no sin, a God who ain't got no problems, a God who is never messed up, can stay with me in my mess. How can you, who is just as messed up as me, leave me and talk about me when I get caught up in my mess? But God, who don't know anything about mess, can stay with me through the whole mess. I made up my mind. Go on and leave if you want to leave. You ain't got to Facebook me. You ain't got to text me. You ain't got to call me. If God is for me, that's more than everybody else against me. Let me help you out. That means, Pastor Murphy, if everybody in Mount Zion left, God was still for you. You're still the majority. Because if God be for you, it don't matter who is against you. The valley, first of all, you got to have the right perspective in the valley. Secondly, you got to realize that the valleys are personal. But finally, you got to realize that there is progress in the valley. Yeah, David says, yea, though I walk through the valley. Yeah, the valley is not a permanent situation. It's just something that you're walking through. Yeah, David says, don't ever get it twisted. Don't ever get so caught up in what you're going through that you begin to think that you're going to be in the valley forever. David says, no, the valley is just a passing experience. Yeah, the valley is just something that you're going through. And if you just keep on walking, eventually you'll get to the end of the valley. The only way you can stay in the valley is if you stop walking. Somebody praying with me back there. Yeah, is if you stop walking. But if you just keep on walking, the valley may be long. The valley may sometimes get lonely, get dark and dismal. But if you just keep on walking, eventually you'll get to the end of the valley. That's why you can never afford to make a permanent decision in a temporary situation. The valleys are not forever. So don't make a permanent decision out of something that's only temporary. Just keep on walking. And you'll get, because I know I'm preaching to somebody up in here that's saying, preacher, you don't know how long I've been in the valley. I've been in this thing for a long time. I've been going through, my finances been messed up for a long time. My health been messed up for a long time. My marriage been messed up for a long time. I'm telling you, I understand. But just keep on walking. Because eventually you'll get to every valley has a beginning and an end. All right, let me see if I can make this thing plain. here it is. I remember my grandfather, he passed year before last. He was 93. My grandfather used to make me drive him to Quincy, Florida. Yeah. Now, the thing I hated about driving my granddaddy to Quincy, Florida was two things. First of all, my grandfather acted as if I didn't drive myself every day of the week. He acted as if since he was in the car, now he got to tell me how to drive. Turn here, slow down, go around that car, don't drive in this lane. And I wanted to say, I do this every day. But he was old school, you couldn't talk back. So I just did what he said. The second thing I hated about driving my grandfather is my grandfather always wanted to take the way that they took before they built the highway. Yeah. I used to say, Daddy, I understand you took 34th Street when there wasn't a highway, but there's a highway now. He'll say, you driving me, you go the way I say go. And I wanted to say, well, I just won't drive you, but I told you he old school, couldn't talk back. But one thing I found out by driving my grandfather was that if you get on 34th Street, right here on 18th Avenue, and you just stay on that road, it'll take you to the steps of the Capitol building in Tallahassee. Now that's 4 hours away. But if you just stay on the road, don't give off of it, you'll get to the Capitol building. Now, there are some bumps in the road. There are some speed traps along the way. There are some curves in the road. But if you just stay on the road, eventually you'll get to the end of the road. And that's all David is trying to tell us in this text, that I know the valley may be rough sometimes. I know there may be some curves in the valley. I know there may be some holes in the valley. But if you just stay on the valley, and I'm not trying to take it for granted, because I know there are some people in the valley that will aggravate you like my grandfather aggravated me. But all I'm trying to tell you is just stay on the road. Keep on going, and eventually you'll get to the end of the valley. David says, yea, though I walk through the valley, I fear no evil. Why won't I fear no evil? Not because of anything that's in the valley, but simply because thou art with me. Yeah, David says the reason that I recognize that I can make it through the valley is not because I'm educated enough. Not because I have enough financial resources. Not because I'm influential and affluential. Not because of the people that I know. But the reason that I know I can make it through the valley is for one reason. Because thou art with me. And because you are with me, you're not only in the valley, you're not only the God that's in the valley, but you're the God of the valley. And you created the valley. And because you created the valley and you're with me, I know that I can make it through the valley. But the last thing I want to tell you, and I'm taking my seat, is that because we have a friend in the valley, that's something that's too good to keep to yourself. Because the spirit in which David wrote this text is as if David is standing on the pinnacle of his kingdom. And he's shouting out to all of Jerusalem about his shepherd. He's telling everybody how good his shepherd is. And if we're going to embrace the true spirit of this text, we can't just read this text, but rather we have to let somebody else know how good our shepherd is. Yeah, it's too good to keep to ourselves. We have to let somebody else know how good. It's almost like my grandmama's pound cake. You want to eat it by yourself, but it's so good you got to share it with somebody else. That's how the knowledge that he's a friend in the valley. Okay, let me close it out like this, because you're acting like y'all not getting this thing. Y'all know my friend Pastor Banks. He preaches here sometimes. Yeah, because he seeks in his life to be just like me. He tells illustrations like me. And I believe he's told this illustration that he stole from me. but it fits so good right here. I got to tell it to you again. There's a story about a dog owner, and he had all of these show dogs. And he would go take these show dogs to all of these competitions, and they would win first place prizes at these different competitions. Finally, this rich man decided, you know what? I don't want these show dogs no more. I want a mutt. Yeah, he went to the rough side of town, found a mutt. Mutt jumped in the car, got him all dirty. He took the mutt home, and because the mutt was dirty, he gave the mutt a bath. When the mutt got out of the bath, the mutt was shivering, so he put clothes on the mutt. The mutt looked like he was hungry, so he gave the mutt something to eat. And when the mutt got ready to go to sleep, he didn't make the mutt sleep outside. He let the mutt sleep in his bed. One day, this rich man woke up to find that the mutt was gone. His butler said to him, I told you those mutts were ungrateful. I told you that you couldn't do nothing with those mutts. The man was sad. One day he was sitting down in his study and he heard scratching at the door. He went to the door and opened the door, and the mutt was right there. The mutt jumped up in his arms and the man began to cry. And finally, when he looked up, as far as his eye could see, there was other mutts in the yard. See, Pastor Murphy, that mutt had not run away. But you know what that mutt did? He went and told all the other mutts that I know a man. If you're dirty, he'll clean you up. I know a man. If you're out, he'll bring you in. I know a man. If you're lost, he'll find you. I know a man. If you're cold, he'll put something on you. And that's all I'm trying to tell you, that we ought to tell somebody else that I know a man. If you're sick, he'll heal your body. That I know a man. If you're out, he'll bring you in. That I know a man. If you're lost, do you know this man? Don't fool me this early. Do you know him? What's his name? Jesus, the lily of the valley. What's his name? The bright and morning star. What's his name? The rose of Sharon. What's his name? My battle axe in the time of a battle. What's his name? Shelter in the time of storm. What's his name? Died on Friday. What's his name? Got up early Sunday morning. What's his name?